The wrong button. Hey, that's the way to start it off. Nothing says screw up or boomerang it like the state of Florida in football these days. If it's not the Florida Gators, well, we're going to talk about the team in Jacksonville a little bit tonight. But while we also talk about Florida football, it's not too bad. The Miami Dolphins lead the Rams in the second quarter, 10-0 in Monday Night Football action. You're may wondering what the heck you're talking about a game for next Sunday. Well, we got two great guys here to come together. This is the one night that we could get it scheduled. So, hey, we start football well in advance, can talk it all year round. But, hey, let me go ahead and bring the two guests in here tonight. What we're going to be focusing on is the game next Sunday at 1 p.m. on CBS. The great Jacksonville Jaguars at a big 2-8, 0-5 away from home, represented by our great friend. We had him last year on the stream with us talking Florida, Georgia. Then I went to the ER afterwards that night. It's the great MC Wale. Hey, dude, how are you?
I'm good. How are you guys doing?
Doing good. Good to have you back with us this year.
Well, thank you for having me.
Well, I tell you, I've bragged about you, and also, look, have fun with this. Talk all you want. Be as outspoken as you want to. All opinions are valid here, and let's have some fun. And a lot of people around have seen my Billy Napier rants this year. So, and as a Jaguar fan, I know it's had to be a really disappointing year more than normal, right?
Disappointing is not even the right word. I mean, what's worse than hell? like real talk. What is the worst thing you can think of? And it's lower than that.
Well, let's bring in our next guest here who could probably tell us about the 7 stages of hell being a Detroit Lions fan over the years. It's the great JT Kirk. Hey, JT, how are you doing?
Hail, good evening, gentlemen. Yes, I would say normally for, maybe 5 decades, what's worse than hell? Being a Detroit Lions fan. But thankfully, this is the first year I don't have to wear a bag over my head or even over my avatar's head just talking about the Lions, right? So this is a different experience where I get to say good things about this team. So I am pumped. I'm pumped.
I am already cringed for Thanksgiving Day because I've always loved Thanksgiving Day football because of the Dallas Cowboys. Not this year. One year I'm going to have to actually hope for Detroit to give some good Thanksgiving Day football for a change.
Oh, I know. Goodness. Oh, yeah. So I, would have an aunt and uncle that would live near the stadium back when it was the Silverdome in Pontiac. And a couple times we did get tickets to the games, and it's like a noon game or something. And then, all the men go to the game or something. And then, the wives are sitting there saying, well, aren't you going to be back for food? Dinner's at 3:30, 4:00. And it's like, no, honey, don't worry. We're leaving at halftime. So, that's how that always went down. So that's the real Thanksgiving tradition in town, at least until recently.
Go for the first half, then come home. Yes, exactly. So, MC Wale, how have the big games been this year for Jaguars at 2-8? Has it been kind of like, I know you said hell, but how bad has hell been this year?
I think it starts with the expectation that was built up all offseason. You start off with, last year was a bit of a dud, but Trevor Lawrence is back. And, by the way, Trevor Lawrence is getting a new contract. That's great. We're announcing these throwback jerseys. That's great. We've got Josh Allen signed to a long-term contract. That's great. We've got cornerstones put in place. We go out in free agency, and however you want to talk about free agency, I thought it was mediocre at best, but you have to give faith because you've got to hope that everything comes together. So it's billed as, this is one of the most important off seasons of the Jacksonville Jaguars entire franchise. Mm-hmm. And then you start off week 1 and you lose a pretty close game to Miami, a game you should have won. And Kansas, and realistically, if they win that game and start off 1-0, this entire season looks way different. But you lose a close game at Miami, and then the dominoes start to fall. Now you start to see Oh, what were you gonna say?
Yeah, not just a close game. I remember that they were driving, and Travis Etienne fumbles into the end zone.
Mm-hmm.
Miami then goes down. I mean, it was a 14-point swing, and the game changed completely.
Yep. At that point, it's like you make one small mistake and you can't overcome it. So now it becomes a situation of, okay, well, starting off on 1, it's not the worst thing in the world, and then it gets worse. You get beat by a Browns team. You get absolutely smoked by a Bills team on Monday night in front of the world, and now you're looking at 0-3. You get and you go take on the Texans. You lose to them. You get a win against the Colts, who, quite frankly, aren't very good. I think the problem is that you're looking at an inconsistency. You're looking at an offense that, on paper, should be considered probably top 15, top 12 offense that can't score more than 20 points a game.
And we'll take a look at the schedule as we come up here. Let me real quick say hello to everybody in the chat tonight. We've got Connie Cleary here. Hey, Connie, good to see you. I don't know who you follow in NFL, Connie, but I know you're our resident Penn State fan. Always great to see you here. The great Mrs. Dadman Walking, who has also seen MC Wale in action down on the fields at many games. This guy is the voice of Jacksonville at all the local sporting events. And when the ones that don't have him are messing up big time. Seriously, we've loved your work over the years.
Much appreciated.
Absolutely. And JT Kirk is with us. Hail to you. Wade Nation is here with us. Go Lions. Hey, he's got Lions by 70. And I tell you what, you will not get a lot of disagreement out of there with that, Wade. But like you said, really, and we'll focus on this, JT. Feel free if you have any observations of Jaguars. Then we'll come back to Detroit a little bit.
You know, I was looking at some team stats before here, just trying to get a feel for what the Jags have done this year, because being in the NFC North, we don't tend to get a lot of AFC South games on TV, right? So I really wanted to see what the offense production was like, what the defense was doing, especially compared to a team like the Lions, who has put up an average just over 30 points a game, and the offense numbers don't look that terrible, right? For the Jags, Wale was saying just lack of consistency. I'm looking at this and saying, how have they not won more games?
Because they make critical errors at the most inopportune times of games. That's what it comes down to. It's the NFL. Everyone is a professional. Everyone is playing their hardest. But it is insane to watch a team that, when the quarterback makes a turnover, either fumbles or throws an interception, that they go into such a shell and self-preservation mode that it just completely ruins any sort of vibe or game flow that this team has. And then you also have to keep in mind, for a good chunk of these games, they're playing from behind. So, of course, the stats are going to look a little bit better when you're down 12, 14, 17 points and you're trying to make the score look respectable,
I see. Yeah. Oh, and I'm all too familiar with that. For years, we had, I guess, somewhat well-known quarterback, Matthew Stafford.
Oh, yeah.
The Georgia Bulldog, human turnover machine. Yeah.
Oh, I went to that bowl game where they beat Michigan State, where Stafford was the starting quarterback. Anyway,
he was great for the Florida Gators because he couldn't beat the Gators.
The real issue.
Hello, Stunning. Yeah, go ahead, JT.
Yeah, one of the issues outside of injuries and there were a number of issues, but one of the things that you'd always say about Stafford in Detroit was, well, his numbers are great. He's a great quarterback. Okay, but he was throwing for 300 yards after the team was already down, 17 points in the fourth quarter, and there's no way they're coming back. Right. So
that's bringing. You know who I'm thinking of, JT? Dak Prescott.
Exactly.
Sorry.
And Matt Stafford was always just one of these guys that would throw up these great numbers, but it was like, okay, meaningless. A lot of people would just call him Stat Padford.
Yeah.
Because the man just, would do it. And that's why we ended up getting rid of him, I think, was just not the right fit here.
Exactly. Well, let me bring this up to Wale's point here, too, is if you look at this from the footballdatabase.com, you can see how much Jacksonville's been playing from behind. The Miami game, they had the lead at halftime, 17-7, but this game, Wale, I believe it was 17-7. The Jaguars are driving. ATN fumbles into the end zone. Then Miami has a big pass for the touchdown, and then, of course, they get the 6 points to win the final margin. 2 field goals, I think, in the fourth quarter. Again, they fall behind, but against the next week against Cleveland, who is not much this year, ended up down 13-3 at the half. Against Buffalo, well, look, 34-3 at the half. Houston, they were a little competitive, but they were still behind. Indianapolis, they were, it was kind of close at beginning. But then again, the Bears got a good first half lead. Many times the teams, when you get behind, you really don't have much of a chance. Or to your point is you can pad those stats really, really well, and inopportune times. But Wale, are there any particular games that really jump out at you this year? I know you mentioned the Miami game was one that.
So I think you can look at the Miami game as kind of being a tone setter for how the season was going to go. Mainly, you have one mistake, and it completely threw off the entire vibe. Then you look at the Indianapolis game. Yes, they won 37-34, but they were literally about 4 plays away from losing that game completely because it took the last second interception of Joe Flacco in the end zone to seal that game. But they were driving down the field and could have scored to completely win that game. The New England game may have been their most well-rounded game from like a offensive defensive standpoint, but even still, New England was able to drive down the field on the first possession of the game, and you start to think, all right, well, here we go again. A bad team is coming down and kicking your face in. The game against Green Bay, you lose basically to a backup, and you make it interesting. But then, of course, Trevor throws a pick. Philadelphia, fun, interesting game. You have a shot to win it. Trevor throws another pick, and then this Minnesota game where you got Mac Jones in as the starter. Which, by the way, the controversy with that is that Trevor's injured, which I believe Trevor actually has an injury. But I also think that with the way the season's gone, if he wanted to say, hey, this injury is not something that I can come back from and goes into surgery and he goes on IR, it's a wrap. It should be a wrap for everybody involved. You shouldn't. Most of your starters who are going to play are going to start getting rotated in less and starting getting those backups in, because at 2-8 at this standpoint, what are you playing for?
You got 7 more games left, but let me say hello to Stunning. Oi to you, Stunning, and hello, good evening to the great Miss Smart Muses. Welcome. Good to see y'all tonight. Make sure you hit like, subscribe, share out the stream if you can. We're talking the Detroit Lions, the Jacksonville Jaguars, which will be played next Sunday in the NFL, and I got 2 great experts for their local teams here.
Wally, you did ask that question. What are you playing for? If you were the Lions for a number of years, you would still say, "Oh, there's 7 games left. We could get a winning record. We could miss the playoffs by a game or 2. Won't that be great? We're 8-8. Wow, yippee! And then you just screw yourself out of a good draft position.
Oh, you want to talk about drafts?
Here's the standings, though. Right to your point, though, just in the AFC South, Jacksonville's 4 games behind Houston, who's leading the league, who's leading the division. As we see, Detroit, of course, is top of their division of 8-1. But to the point is, how far do you go with this? How long do you go? To what extent, could Trevor's injury become worse by playing through an injury, or should they shut him down?
They should shut him down. There's no reason to play any of these games. You're 4 games back in your division. Granted, you still have to play the Texans, the Titans twice, and the Colts. So it's like, it's a miracle if you go 4-2 in those sessions. If you win all 4 of those divisional games, you might be in it. You're not because the Texans look really good and they're going to pull away in the division, and then the rest of the AFC as a whole is harsh. So you would be trying to fight for that 7th seed wild card
Yeah.
spot. So at this point, you might as well try and shut everything down. But hey, if you're trying to play for a draft pick, oh look, Tent Balky is your GM who has already had 2 number 1 overall picks in Trevor Lawrence and Trayvon Walker. And both of those guys, even though, I love Trevor Lawrence and I love Trayvon Walker, both of these guys have question marks. They're not surefire number 1 picks. And you really want a guy who got run out of Houston, got run out of San Francisco, and has been known to be one of the worst GMs in the history of the NFL, continuing to make another head coaching decision and running another draft. Of course, you don't want that. But that's on Shad Khan at this point. And with 7 games to go, the bye week after this Lions game, I hope he makes the right decision and orders an execute Order 66 because it's time. It's time.
Yeah. Now, do you say if Shad makes the move to GM and coach, or just the coach? Because I've seen a lot of most people on social media, it's been fire the coach. Surprised Doug Peterson still got a job, but I have heard that said about Balky and his decisions. Local talk radio talks about. I know for years before the playoff run a couple years ago, the criticism was Balky. Balky brought in Urban Meyer, I believe, also.
He did,
and he's tied to that and that experiment, and he managed to make Meyer the scapegoat, which he kind of. It was not hard to be
that wasn't hard.
That
yeah,
but Balky also had a bad track record before that. Then you have that. Then now, so you're all for just clean house top to bottom, right?
Question: How blue can my language get on this stream?
It can go whatever. If you want to use a Fanda, you can. The only thing is we try not to F every other word, but I can sense. You can say what you want to.
Okay, so I will use my PG-13 1 allocated F word. Fuck Trent Baalke and fuck Doug Peterson. Both of them can get out of here.
Yes, there you go. You can have it. Stunning says executions NFL. Got to watch more football.
And
yes, and
coming from a club where they have not always done that, especially with Patricia coming out of New England and then really just doing nothing is the most recent reminder. If you don't get rid of the GM and the head coach, you will always have this what if, who's really at fault. And the GM is basically kneecapped from not being able to pick that head coach. Correct. And then it's sitting back on the owner who probably doesn't know what they're doing to the level that a professional in the NFL needs to know what they're doing. So get rid of both. History from so many teams said just get them both gone.
And you mentioned that also Shad Khan also owns Fulham in the English Soccer League, which they're down in the minor leagues, I guess. I guess you got to win so much to get to the higher level.
Yeah,
how that works.
It's a relegation system.
Yeah, the Fulham Soccer Club's never done much over there. They're in the lower levels. So he seems to have had a track record of just losing teams and happy with it.
Yeah, for Shad, he's a business owner, so it breaks down to, all right, are my businesses making money? In the NFL, if you own an NFL team, you print money basically, so it doesn't matter the performance on the field. All you have to do is put the semblance of a football team together, and guess what? You're going to be making millions upon millions of dollars. So
and of course now he gets the new stadium, or not? The new stadium coming in. JT, I guess the Jaguars are going to be out of the stadium for about, I guess 1 year they play diminished capacity, and then there's a year that they have to find a new location. So they're going to be out of the stadium for a few years, but they're going to. If you know anything about Jacksonville, they have been preoccupied with renovating downtown for 30 years. And they're obsessing.
Jacksonville and Detroit are so similar in so many ways.
Magically, he's going to build this nice Taj Mahal and hotel and this crap right where it is. And then magically people are going to go downtown and it's going to be a vibrant downtown. I don't agree, but everybody's drunk the Kool-Aid. It's been signed. It's what it is. The NFL owners have approved it. MC Wale, what do you look at? I mean, with that whole stadium deal, do you look at that as helping the area or really doing much for the team? Because I'm like, it's all like smoke and mirrors and make everything pretty. But when you still have a bad GM and bad roster moves,
So,
you're not going to win on the field.
So the thing we have to keep in mind is sometimes, and it's hard for us because we're fans, but we have to separate sometimes the business side of things with the actual like football operations side of things. Everbank, aka the Gator Bowl, all of it. This stadium's been around for almost 40 or 50 plus years, maybe longer than that, I think.
But the original Gator Bowl was well before the 50s. That thing's been in there since my dad played high school football.
Yeah, so it got renovated. Yeah, so it got renovated.
The big renovation was in '94. They moved Florida, Georgia for 2 years. The first game back was in '96, the first year the Jaguars were in existence.
So then you look at the minor changes that they've done with like the scoreboards and some of the other stuff, but the stadium
swimming pools.
Those swimming pools are nice. I've been in them. They're pretty dope. But what I would say though is that it's been 30 years, so it is time to get that stadium updated to not only just like NFL standards, but it's not just the football team, even though I know that's what a lot of people always look at. It's why do massive shows tend to skip Jacksonville? It's because the facilities aren't up to par. For example, you're not doing this stadium renovation just because of Jacksonville Jaguars. You're doing the stadium renovation so that you could potentially do a college football playoff game here. You could do a Super Bowl or even like a Super Bowl here. Acts like the Eras Tour for like Taylor Swift or Beyonce, those level of concerts where they're here for 4 or 5 days, and you can draw 60,000-70,000 people to those concerts. You're renovating the stadium so you can do those types of events. So I know that we see the $1 billion price tag in the Jacksonville Jaguars and Stadium of the Future and stuff like that, but it is really truly an investment in the city, even though I know we see $1 billion as the tagline, and you're just like, well, that money can be well spent elsewhere, and it could. I'm not going to lie. It could be well spent in other places. But if you are going to try to draw more people to your city by creating a venue where more events come through and happen there, then it will then not trickle, but it should help downtown. There are some really cool spots downtown and places to go and things to do.
There are.
But if you only have an event on the weekends, then Monday through Friday night, there's not much happening. So by having a new stadium, and you can draw in a Tuesday night act or a Thursday night big concert and stuff like that, it then tends to help.
Yeah, I guess sometimes some of us old farts around here look at the associated directly with the team and the bad results, and it's kind of, you get a little cynical, but also the area they've tried to grow it for like 30 years and it just will not grow. But like you said, to the points about bringing acts through, getting a Super Bowl, potentially a college playoff game. JT, have y'all had a lot of renovations with Ford Field?
So Detroit's had a long history of trying to do the stadium venue game. First with Comerica Park, built around, I think it was the year 2000. It was finished right downtown. Then after that, directly next to it was Ford Field in the early 2000s, and then just within the last 5 years, Little Caesars Arena for the Pistons and the Red Wings, all very close to one another, all downtown. Great places to do a concert venue, half marathon, and the marathon end at Ford Field. There's a lot of things that you would say, okay, that's great for the area, but when you don't have a game, it's an absolute ghost town. And all of the development that the owners of these teams said that they would invest in terms of housing and other businesses, once that stadium went up, nothing ever happened. So it's more than just the renovation on the stadium that's going to make this happen. Yeah, I'm not going to say it didn't have an impact, but once you get a couple blocks or more from the stadium, it's not really any place you want to be, unfortunately. Mixed success. So I hope that it works better for Jacksonville than it did for Detroit.
We got a river. We got a river, so hey.
So, we have a river too. Yeah. Don't you worry.
Well, I know that's what happens around here, Wally. Sometimes is we just jump. We call them squirrel streams. We love squirrels around here. It's a squirrel haven, and basically we'll jump around topic to topic. But I wanted to come back to the record because you were touching on the standings here about specifically with Trevor Lawrence and how long do you leave him in? Because we see the Jaguars are bottom at 2-8. Actually, down near the bottom. Wow, the Dolphins are about as bad as them now. Ugh. Talk about a game that you should have won early in the year. But it gets to your point, though, because looking at it, you got Buffalo at 8-2, Pittsburgh, Baltimore having 7 wins, Houston, Kansas City 9. So they're really chasing the whole. It's not like you're chasing 1 or 2 or 3 teams. You're chasing pretty much everybody at this point.
Yeah.
So your point about is it really worth potentially injuring your first round quarterback for a longer period?
It's not worth it, but it's also by Trevor Lawrence being injured and not playing against the Vikings, and then you see Mac Jones go out there and have a really solid first drive and then do absolutely nothing for the entire game is more of a further indictment of Doug Peterson's coaching ability and his way of preparing this team to be ready to play. I've said it on Twitter and a couple of other places that as time goes by, I think it becomes more and more and more apparent that Doug Peterson as a coach, he was never really actually this offensive mastermind that, took Philly to the Super Bowl. I think he was a guy who was a coach who got very, very, very lucky with a series of circumstances that he was able to parlay into a Super Bowl win and has been riding off of that for the rest of his time because he got run out of Philly and he's going to get run out of here for the way he has operated with this team.
And to your point, Mac Jones, the first quarter, Minnesota scores. You lose a game where the other team, it's like Dallas Cowboys, nothing but field goals. 4 field goals for the Vikings. That was the extent of their offense. 1 touchdown drive early in the game, and then nothing else from the offense, to your point. Yeah, JT.
Well, I was going to say, in getting run out of town, just getting lucky on another good team, that sounds like the Bill Belichick, I guess, family of coaching, as they might say, where you get like the Matt Patricias of the world that they just don't hack it as a head coach once they leave the Patriots.
Yeah, well, the issue that we're seeing here is that with Doug Peterson, I think he just has a particular loyalty to certain coordinators, specifically his offensive coordinator Press Taylor, who has been the primary play caller here in Jacksonville for the last 2 seasons. And even though most people would assume that if things were starting to turn sour and look bad, you would then take over and try to steer the ship and steer it in the right direction, just even if it's for a little bit of self-perseverance. But he continues to show faith in his offensive coordinator. And this is the exact same behavior he had when he was in Philly, when he was dealing with the whole Carson Wentz thing after the Super Bowl, after that Super Bowl season, and then just refuses to change or modify how he wants to run things.
And how long has Press Taylor been the offensive coordinator?
He's been the offensive coordinator for 2-3 seasons now.
Okay, because I know there's been a lot of unhappiness with him over time.
Well, so we'll use some examples for last year. Last year, when the offense was moving and the offense would score, okay, cool. The Jaguars would build up a 10-3 lead, and then all of a sudden you're starting to see like trick plays and weird screen passes and just like things you shouldn't break out of your playbook unless you were up like 42-7,
unless you're playing Dallas. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you this question, Wally, real quick, because I'm not as familiar with the roster this year. I know Evan Ingram is back, but I'm going to bring up the box score from Sunday. It's what happened. I thought they had some better named wide receivers.
I mean, Brian Thomas is their rookie. and he only got targeted on that last drive, which is absolutely absurd.
He had 3 targets for the whole game.
Yeah. So. Evan Ingram, he had been hurt for like the last 4 games, and even though he had a decent stat line, we're not gonna lie, he had 8 targets and caught 6 of them, 40 yards. But it's one of those, it's one of those things. They don't have an identity truly on offense.
But is this player personnel managed? Because I thought they had the receiver a couple years ago from LSU. I thought they had some better name receivers that went along with Ingram when they made that trip to the playoff 2 years ago.
Yeah, they had Marvin Jones, and they had a couple of other guys on that 2022 roster, or 2022 roster. But then last year you had a couple of guys like leave, and then obviously the big thing that they did this offseason was the expected re-signing of Calvin Ridley, but he ended up going to Tennessee. And in his place, they signed Gabe Davis, who is a waste of a roster spot, if we're being completely honest. And that's not to speak poorly on him, but his career in Buffalo was always, he's either going to catch like 7 passes and 2 touchdowns, or he's not going to show up on the stat line at all.
Well, because Calvin really was like the third man, the third or fourth option that year, and the offense really could move. They were attacking. I mean, they had that many good receivers.
Him and Zay Jones. And Zay Jones, believe it or not, was for some reason the linchpin of how that offense moved. Because when Zay got hurt for a few games, that offense kind of sputtered. Right. But when he got back, it kind of picked back up. But it's a mess all around. Offensively, it's a mess. You fire your defensive coordinator last year, who, yes, by I think a lot of people's admission, was not the best defensive coordinator, but his defense was able to keep them in games that they had no business being in. But you see the alternative this year. The defense is not keeping them in anything. Except for the Vikings game specifically, you forced 3 turnovers against the Vikings offense, who's pretty darn good, but yet you still can't get enough done on offense.
And they had 3 picks against Sam Darnold too.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So the defense kept them in the game.
Yeah, man. Can you bring up the Jags schedule for the rest of the season?
Yes, I will do that.
I have a nightmare scenario for you.
Let's hear it.
Well, you speak of nightmare scenarios. This is what they just did this week. Talk about nightmare helmets.
I didn't hate the helmets. The problem was you have the helmet with the white, but then you wear it with the black uniform.
Yes.
Like if you're gonna do the white out helmet, if you're gonna do the white all like icy helmet, you got to do all white jerseys. Now I know that it's against like NFL rules to be the home team and wear white, but
unless you're the Dallas Cowboys.
But I would also say err on the side of asking for forgiveness versus permission, and just do it anyway.
And hello, Buddy Hepburn. Buddy says Detroit. Yeah, I'll bring up their schedule real quick here so y'all can look at that. Then we'll get over
so JD, you said you have a nightmare scenario for us.
Right. So obviously this Sunday, I'm going to pick the Lions.
Okay,
that seems like a smart bet
on that.
The remainder season at the Lions versus the Texans, at the Titans, home to Jets, at the Raiders versus Titans, and ends up the season at the Colts.
So you've got that bye week. There'll be some argument made that the Lions are a Super Bowl contender, so we can't, judge them too harshly on that. I've heard it all before. Then you play the Texans. The Texans will be closer than it should. So then they'll say, well, the schedule looks better. We're all on the hot seat as coaches and GMs. We're not going to sit any players. You beat the Titans, you beat the Jets, you beat the Raiders, and you beat the Titans again, who are all circling the drain for draft picks. Now all of a sudden you've got, 6 wins, 7 wins, potentially. And then you play the Colts for second place in the division. And all of a sudden, this team that shouldn't be doing anything has had probably the easiest schedule, or one of the 3 easiest schedules going into the end of the year, pulls out a win in Indy, and you get 14th in the draft pick. To me, that's the nightmare scenario, because you'll keep everyone, you'll fire no one, and you won't get the draft capital you need.
It's a nightmare.
Next year you'll do it all over again, right?
That is fair. That is a fair assessment, and it would be an absolute nightmare scenario. But I think that even if those specific circumstances were to happen, I still think that someone is getting fired, and it should be both of them. And the reason being is because you can look at the 2022 season where they started off 2-7, went on a miraculous run to make the playoffs, and thought that they were an ascending team. Better to be lucky than good in 2022. We'll take that. 2023, you start off what, 8-3, and then you drop every single game at the end of that season to not only lose the division but to miss the playoffs entirely. So that's already a sad indictment, and obviously you don't necessarily fire everyone for a season like that, but you're on red alert. Then you start off 2-8, but then you start to rally to win meaningless games to blow having a top 3 pick in the NFL draft, and you still think that keeping everybody is the best idea because they showed improvement towards the end here. No, that you still fire every single person involved in coaching and in the GM. Yeah.
JT, I thought you were talking about the Florida Gators at one point, but that's the same. That's the exact scenario we have right now.
Thing.
But I'm not going to go on that tangent tonight. But
I can't tell you how many times I've seen that nightmare scenario play out with the Lions, where they'll keep a Jim Caldwell, they'll keep Mariucci, they'll keep. Gosh, I mean, the list goes on and on and on for all these coaches. Patricia,
that's what I said earlier this season, and I know it's a college example, but with the Gators, after A&M, after the third game, the second embarrassment right then, as bad as it was, you fire him then, you get rid of it, because this will happen. People Tennessee tried to give them the game. His bad decision, we look good. You beat UCF when you didn't score any points in the second half. You beat a couple other little, you beat Sanford, a couple wins, and then everybody's taking this fall leading up to Texas is, of course, you lost 2 quarterbacks, but this was happening before you had the injuries. But everybody got this, he's doing better now. The team's improving, and then you run into Texas, and oops, when you play a real team, he ain't any better. And like you said there, so many times we've seen this happen in the NFL, and you lose your window to fire these, to make the move that you should have made, when you need to make that move. Like Wale's saying, though, this team, the Jaguars I forgot that they started 2-7 that year, Wale, because all we focused on was that playoff run, the huge comeback in the second half against the Chargers. That was another part of the season. They got such a hole in the first half, but they had the miraculous comeback to beat the Chargers in the playoffs. And then since then it's been back to mediocrity.
Yeah, and not even mediocrity. It's just it's below average play for a team that set up the expectation that they were going to be pushing for not only a division but pushing for like a top 4 spot in the AFC, like for the playoffs. Absolutely. And they're nowhere near it. So it's one thing when you set the expectation and being like, our season might be a little weird, but like we're gonna give it our best effort. No, Shad Khan came out here and told everybody publicly that this is the best Jaguars team that he's put together, and he feels extremely confident about seeing sustained success throughout the season. And at 2-8, he's a loser and he's a liar for saying that.
Yes. All right, folks, that's why MC Wale's here. He will tell you exactly what he thinks and how he thinks. So let's take another look at the other part of our matchup, the home team, the Detroit Lions. JT, how is this team really for real? I mean, this is like the NFC Championship game last year. Now 8-1, leading the North again. I mean, is this a daydream?
Well, okay. So for a number of years, for people that I guess don't know me in real life, I was the guy that was always rooting for the team to lose because I knew
We have a
if I
segment
put
of that in
$10
Jacksonville, by the
or
way.
whatever on them to lose, I'd come away a winning man, even though I'm not advocating gambling on here.
Yep.
But it was more fun to root against the team than it was to root for them, because you just got let down, right? The term SOL, means one thing to the rest of the world. Here it means same old Lions, because no matter what happened, they would find a way to choke, find a way to lose the game. You go down to Ford Field and you have the Packers drowning out the home crowd shouting, "Go Pack, go!" I mean, I've seen it. Okay, I've seen it. So, this team is for real. Finally, last year they were for real. This year they're better than they were last year. I'm confident in it. Now, last night made me really start sweating bullets and questioning myself on that, but they came back and won. This team has had some critical injuries on defense, still managed to come out, when it counted, they made it happen. They had some suspensions, most notably JMO, and yet they were still able to get the next person to come in and make plays. So you've got an offense with the tools to score over 30 points a game. Even if your defense is having a rough week, that means you win games in the NFL. So I am confident that they can have teams come in or even go on the road. I'm not scared about them playing the 49ers at the end of the season. I'm not.
See, I was taking a look at the stats here. We can take a look at the team stats for them. Jared Goff has thrown for over 2,000 yards. He was not necessarily known as a great throwing quarterback in college, but he's still completing 72% of his passes. And Jahmyr Gibbs is a dominant running back that they've got for almost 800 yards on the season.
And if you go back 1 week, because he threw 5 interceptions yesterday, it was probably his worst game of his career in the NFL.
Yeah.
That completion percentage was over 80%.
Right. 15 to 30. It was 50% yesterday, 2 touchdowns and 5 picks on the day.
Right.
Throw 5 interceptions, but you still find a way to win. And that's the difference between we can talk about having the players and, the personnel all day long. But when push comes to shove, when you have a good team and good coaching, you can have your quarterback throw 5 interceptions and still find a way to gut out a win.
Exactly. And that's really something that this year I feel like that has been drastically improved over last year. There were a couple games, especially the conference championship game, where I think Dan Campbell was confused about whether he was playing Madden or whether he was an actual NFL coach.
Yeah.
With some of the things that he was just calling and some of that clock management. This year, I feel like it's been ironed out, and they're not going to start doing the crazy stuff until they get up, 28 points on Dallas.
Right. There you go. Well, JT, enjoy it. JT's loving to rub it in tonight. I don't blame me, JT. And hey, Corey, good to see you, Corey Cochran. How are you tonight? Oh, Boo Lions. Hey. Well, this is a battle of cats in this one. Buddy, we're going to come back to that comment in a little bit, but I don't want you to leave because I do want to hit that a little bit. Some topics that JT and I have had a chance to talk about and love to hear him see Wale's thoughts about it. But looking at this game, 26, 20 in a loss, 20 in a win, 42, 47, 31, 52, 24, 26. Definitely a fun team to watch. Definitely got some offensive firepower there and not a bad defense. I'm guessing the win against the Seahawks is probably one of those games where they gave up a lot of points late in the game.
Now, look, one of the biggest things that I'm worried about is first quarter performance for the Lions is poor. I want to say they're averaging maybe 7 points or less in the first quarter. This is not a fast starting offense. And one of the things that really made the Texans look like they could just run away with this game last night was the Lions didn't score the first quarter. And that really, really hurt. Now, however, the second quarter, the team averages over 14 points in the second quarter. So they do end up mounting that offense. But if the defense doesn't come out and help them stay in that game in the first half,
Right.
it looks ugly. It looks like the game that you saw last night. So,
or like a Dallas Cowboys game these days. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So one of the things that I was going to ask your resident Jacksonville expert here, MC Wale, what do you think is the Jags' best chance then to take on the Lions coming into Sunday?
I'm going to keep this as clean as possible, but everybody gets food poisoning the night before. that would be the dream scenario for the Jacksonville Jaguars to win this game. Okay. In all seriousness, though, I think it shows. I think if anything, Houston showed that if you can get some pressure and force Goff into making some poor decisions, then if you can get the ball off him, then that gives you a slightly better opportunity to win. Jacksonville's run defense hasn't been terrible. I think having Foye Oluokun coming back and kind of filling into that step as a linebacker can help mitigate some of the damage that Montgomery and Gibbs are going to do. But when it comes to the wide receivers and stuff like that, that's where I get a little bit cautious. Tyson Campbell is gonna shadow probably St. Brown, but you still have Jameson Williams, and you still have you've got Jameson Williams, and then you also have Sam Laporta, who Jacksonville is just terrible at covering tight ends. They've never been able to do it in the history of ever, and so it'll probably be a big game for Laporta and for Jameson specifically. But if Jacksonville is able to force a couple of turnovers and maybe get like a defensive score or special team score, then it gets interesting.
Well, and one of the things that I've really stressed about is special teams performance for the Lions has been a weak spot. They have given up 40-yard, 50-yard runs. I don't think they've given up 6 points on a return, but there's definitely moments where people that are a little too far back in the field are tackling people when they should not be. So that's definitely a side of the ball that Jacksonville definitely can exploit some weaknesses.
Well, looking at the statistics, Jacksonville gives up the most yardage in the league at the bottom. Detroit's about middle of the pack, the bottom 2/3 roughly. Detroit let's see, Detroit's giving up 345 yards a game. The Jaguars are giving up almost 400 yards a game. Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, how do you have any success with a defense that's that? And they're giving up 26.4 a game, while Detroit's only giving up 19 a game.
Yeah, a full touchdown. So it's hard to find a way, and it's hard to find positives for this Jacksonville Jaguars team to even be like remotely close in keeping this game fun.
Yeah, because see, Detroit is at least point-wise is around 5, 6, 7, 8 at 19 points a game in the league, and the Jaguars are at least better than the Cowboys in terms of points per game, 26.4 per game, but just slightly ahead of the Bucs and Titans and the Raiders. So they could very easily be at the bottom with that kind of differential. But yeah, it's and Buddy raised a point here, like with Dallas in their case. With all the interceptions, they're either pick six or you give up their opponent's red zone who convert their points. Has that been a lot with the Jaguars this year with the offensive mistakes cost them and set the opponents up for short fields?
Oh, I mean, only a handful of situations have the teams had short fields where it was easy. Most of the time, these turnovers just lead to like the fumble in the end zone of Miami. We'll go back to that. It starts with a touchback on the 20, and they drove down the field and scored. Like, it's not a matter of, oh, well, you're giving the team a short field and now it's just a little bit easier to score. It's like they're not stopping anyone, period. Okay. So it doesn't matter if they give them the ball at the 1 or if they give them the ball like on their own 1 or if they're doing it on the opponent's 1.
Yeah. By the way, the Jaguars are near the bottom also offensive in terms of points, 20.2 per game. While the Lions, again, top about 8 at 31 points a game, 31.6 per game.
That's how much they're scoring, right? Yeah. But they're giving up. They've only
19
allowed
a game. 19 a game.
the Lions have only allowed 15 touchdowns.
Wow, that's
the whole
impressive.
season, which, yes, there are some teams that are beating them, like the Chargers, the Steelers, the Bears. I'm trying to think if anyone else comes close. They're right about where the Eagles, I think, are. Eagles, Chiefs, in terms of defense, if you want to think about it like that. But if you're just not giving up that many points, it definitely helps. And I wanted to commend the defense for the second half, not giving up anything substantial. Yeah. That entire half against the Texans was, I don't know what was said in that locker room, but that was just impressive.
I mean,
how you shut that team down.
Yeah, the general rule is that if you are in the NFL and you can limit a team from scoring 3 touchdowns on you, you are going to potentially win a lot of football games. But when you're giving up 4, your odds of winning dramatically shoot down.
Well, JT's point looks like here in terms of special teams, in terms of kickoff returns, I guess really funky with the new kickoff. I hate this year, but Detroit's averaging 35 yards a kickoff return and actually had one for 72 yards. And, special team returns look like they're pretty good, possibly for a touchdown.
You know what team that long was against?
The Dallas Cowboys. Thank you, JT.
Up on that one.
Oh, I know. Hey, well, listen, Jerry won't even put curtains in the stadium, and apparently cost them a touchdown the other day because the receivers having to look into the sun. Anyway, but that's another story. Jerry's World, the stadium that everybody, I don't know. It's a big draw for college sports. The Jaguars have had actually 1 punt return this year, so for a touchdown. But how do you see the special teams for the Jaguars, though, MC? They got a great kicker, though.
They've got a fantastic kicker, and they've got a top probably 3 punter in the game. But when we're sitting here and having to defer to how good our punter and kicker are, it probably doesn't bode well for how good your football team actually is.
No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't at all. So, JT, anything else about Detroit that you want to highlight before we start going through some things we got here?
4th in the league in red zone defense, which is just great. They also, I'm trying to find the stat, but the last few games they have claimed at least 2 picks a game. So wow. if you're thinking turnovers, yeah, they're good at turnovers. I think that the Jags, if they're going to have any chance, need to come out and put up at least 2 touchdowns in the first quarter to get themselves a lead to stay healthy for the rest of that matchup, because once the Lions offense gets started, it isn't pretty for the opponent.
But Mac Jones threw 2 picks last week, so, I mean, it's not likely. And, Wale, what about the Jaguar running backs? They look good at times, but this team doesn't really have a consistent running game, does it, to help compensate for an average quarterback?
They don't, and we're not. And like the hard thing to understand with that is that there are times where that offense, like the running game, actually looks really good, but then you're looking at like Travis Etienne, who had very good games in his first 2 seasons, and for some reason has not been the same. And I know that the conversation is that he's been injured and stuff like that, but even getting him back into the rotation with Tank Bigsby, it's just not really working. But I think that says more about the Jaguars' offensive line than specifically the players.
Mm-hmm.
That could just be me. I could be talking out of my butt. I don't know.
I just saw about our buddy Cam Robinson. I guess he got traded to the Vikings.
Thank God.
What was he? He got like 11. He got beat 11 times or something, or 11 pressures.
He gave up 11. He gave up 11 pressures, and no sacks, but 11 pressures. And that's kind of been the thing with Cam Robinson when he was here in Jacksonville, is that he was good enough to be your starter, but when push comes to shove, he is about an average a left tackle as possible. Right. And they gave him like top 7 or top 8 tackle money. Mm-hmm. So the point of frustration then becomes, all right, you're paying this guy so much money to be this left tackle, of like this like big cornerstone left tackle, and that's not who he was. I remember getting in a very heated argument with somebody online, which of course that sounds stupid. Why don't get in internet arguments, people? It's not worth your time. Talking about how Cam Robinson was average, and I probably wouldn't have signed him to a big deal. And some guy wanted to make his entire point was he only gave up 2 sacks. It's like, sure, he only gave up 2 sacks, but he also wasn't good in doing the job that he was supposed to do. Preventing sacks is one thing, but when your quarterback is constantly under pressure, it's almost the same thing.
Right. Or you can't run block either. Yeah, I think a lot of times with him, it's because it was JT's favorite school, Alabama. You know, yeah, exactly. He was one of Saban's great linemen. It did great in college, but does not always translate to the NFL. Balky brings them in, and just, you know, and just and that's the one history, JT, that you could probably appreciate is the Jaguars have had a history of giving big contracts to below average players, really.
That actually wasn't a Dave. That wasn't a
Dave Caldwell.
It was a Dave Caldwell pick. Yes.
Oh, Mr. Anti Tim Tebow. Yes, exactly. I remember Caldwell.
Yeah, so he wasn't wrong about that.
I still think Tebow could have made it in the NFL with the run, the spread the read options, and now that they do. I think
we'll agree to disagree on that one.
No, JT. Hey, wait. Like I said here we go. Yes, it's him. He and MC Wale.
That's wild.
Yes, exactly. Well, let's take a look at we'll get into the numbers here. Currently, the ESPN analytics predictor has an 81% chance of the Lions winning this game. The Jaguars are at 18%, so there must be a 0.1% chance of a tie. On the injury report, Mason Smith, the defensive tackle, Trevor Lawrence, quarterback, Ezra Cleveland, guard, and Tank Bigsby, running back, are all questionable for the Jaguars, so they're not ruled out for this week. The Lions have Zadarius Smith, defensive end, Malcolm Rodriguez, linebacker, Taylor Decker, offensive tackle, Sam Laporta, tight end, all questionable. Khalif Raymond, wide receiver, is also questionable in the highlight of the injury report. We won't go through the full injury report. In the last 5 games, we got, and I'll bring the schedule up so y'all can look. With
Laporta will play.
Damn it, what do you think I'm playing for the Jaguars? Okay, how about this, Wally? Maybe the Lions will go and trip over their own feet and fumble it into their own end zone.
So we win 2-0.
Hey, you know, it's we talked about long shot possibilities. Why not?
I mean, look, I think it was 2008 or 2009. I watched a Auburn Mississippi State game and 3-2. So anything can happen, but it won't happen.
No,
I actually like Iowa football, man.
I saw the Miami Hurricanes beat the Florida Gators 31-4 one year.
Oof.
2 safeties. 4, yes.
4.
2 safeties. Absurd. But listen, Wally, what's even crazier? Both were punt snaps over the punter's head out of the back of the end zone.
Oh, so it wasn't even they forced it.
No, but not once. Twice the snapper snapped it over the punter's head. Oh God, you had to see it to believe it. It was bizarre. So
that's absurd.
It really, back before Steve Spurrier. But anyway, in the last 5 games, the Jaguars are 1-4, losing this week 12-7 to Minnesota, 28-23. Wally, that was a game that I thought that they had it. Well, they got down too far in the Philadelphia game, and they actually had a chance on the last drive till a pick near the end.
Yeah, and I mean, it's frustrating, but you also have Saquon putting up a literal highlight reel that's always going to be run for the rest of time with a reverse hurdle. He's out here doing trick plays in NFL football games. Like, you can't even do that in like video games, and he did it in real life. So that goes to speak to how well the Jags are doing. But also, like, look, Trevor Lawrence wasn't particularly great in that game either. He was 169 yards passing yards, and he threw 2 picks. Like, It is what it is.
I remember watching this game. I was streaming or doing something, and when I turned around, the Jaguars had the ball back, going for that game-winning drive, and then it just like I think if it was remember, it might have been a fade pass that was well short, or something, but it was just like another bad throw, even though you had time. It just a bad way to win a game. They lost to Green Bay 30-27, another close game.
That is close. If you look on the other side, the Lions only beat them 24-14.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you managed to put up more points on them than Detroit did, and Detroit's got a good offense.
Yeah, but we did it against their backup quarterback. Like Jordan Love, had he stayed in that game's not particularly close.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm amazed that the Bears put 35 up on the Jaguars, though. 35-16 Bears. And that's 3 home games in one of those in England, right?
Yes, in London. They were both
okay.
Both the Bears and the Patriots games were in London.
That's right. I keep forgetting 2 games back to back. The versus threw me because one's technically a road game. I think the New England game was the home game, if I remember.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So, all right. Of course, in the Lions, the last 5, they're 5-0. Look at the offensive production: 26-23 over Houston, 24-14 over Green Bay, 52-14 over Tennessee, 31-29 over Minnesota, and of course, the score we will not talk about. But I'll tell you though, they came out and dominated the Cowboys. That's just day and night with this team. So, looking at it, unless y'all have anything else specific to say, JT, what do you think are the keys of the game for Detroit in this game? Being at home?
I did want to bring up some intangibles about the game too, if we could.
Okay, absolutely. Let's do that because I have another intangible to talk about.
Sure.
But yeah, go ahead.
Real quick, the game will be indoors. The Lions are a dome team, so there's that going on. I know what Jacksonville plays outside, right?
Yes.
So.
Right.
The weather up here has not been great, not been terrible, but I think it was just in the 50s and cloudy and windy today. We've had quite a bit of rain, so you'll be well insulated from all of that. The one thing is this game is beyond sold out. It is going to be loud. It will be absolutely loud in there. So no favors for Lawrence on offense there, trying to get a snap count in.
If he plays.
If he plays, the offense for Jacksonville is going to struggle with sound on that. I went to a game, gosh, I'm trying to remember. I think it was against Atlanta last year, and I was amazed sitting way, way up high just how loud Ford Field can actually get when it's sold out and the fans care, because that's never been something I could say before last year. That will be quite the struggle for the team. The other intangible is if you're watching at home, we're blessed with it being on CBS and not on Fox, so we can dodge the Tom Brady.
Oh, gosh. Yeah, dodge the Tom Brady. Wow, we got 15 people watching us right now, folks. Wow, nice. Thank you.
Anyway,
be
but
sure
you
to hit that like button and subscribe
today.
for us, folks. Yeah, I got to get my pitches in here. It's like, wow, hey, it's a 10 o'clock shift. Hi, everybody. Welcome in. Even a lot of lurkers out there, but hey, lurk away. Say hi if you want to. Okay, so those are good intangibles. Wally, what do you think? Did the Jaguars have any intangibles on their side? I mean, and obviously JT talked about the intangibles from the Lions' home side. What do you think?
The only intangibles I have are the fact that if the linebackers can stay at home and play decent run defense, then what it does is it can allow, if you can get the Lions into 3rd and 7, 3rd and 8, 3rd and 9 or longer, and you're forcing them to throw, you might have an opportunity to get at Jared Goff by rushing with Josh Allen or Trayvon Walker. And, hopefully you might be able to either get them down with a sack or cause a turnover. Mm-hmm. That's all I can say as far as potential opportunities for the Jags, because until we know Trevor Lawrence's availability for this game, if Trevor plays, then you're like, okay, well, now it's can he get the ball to Brian Thomas Jr.? Can can they run play action? Can they run the ball so that they can kind of build some play action? and attack that Lions defense. But if it's Mac Jones who's at the helm on Sunday, then it'll be a long day for Jacksonville. There's a reason why the Jaguars are a plus 13.5 underdog, and I don't even know if they could probably put that number higher, and people would still put money on the Lions.
Well, especially with if Trevor doesn't play Mac Jones, we saw nothing except for one drive this week.
Yeah,
this last week. So, and hello to Wes Cagle. Welcome. Good to see you. To the great New Jersey, the State University of New Jersey, Rutgers. So I don't know if you have a favorite pro team, Wes Cagle. Feel free to say if you do. We're going to hit a couple questions real quick, and then I want y'all to think about your keys to the game for your team in terms of how they could win this game or how they could lose the game, whichever you want to go. Buddy Hepburn actually had asked about this, and this is a topic that I know JT and I have talked about in person. So MC, I'd really love to hear your thought, because I am not a fan of analytics. I'm old school coaching where like Lane Kiffin at Ole Miss is supposedly uber analytics, and he screws up by following the analytics instead of just when a conservative play call, kick the field goals and stuff would have served him right. But Buddy is citing that Tony Khan, and I remember when Shad Khan first bought this team, they got Tony in there, and the first thing he started talking was about analytics. So Buddy's talking about that Khan looks at analytics incorrectly, and it gives him the idea that things are great when they're really not. So you get a bad perception for your team because the numbers may look better than you really think they are. What do you think about this organization, the use of analytics, or analytics in general?
So I think analytics are just another asset and another tool that any team should be utilizing to help make better game day decisions and game planning decisions. It's just you cannot use analytics as a justification for why you continue to do certain things, especially if you see that on the field, it's not working. Mm-hmm. So for example, if analytics says, hey, like when you tend to use, let's say Travis Etienne, for example, when you use Travis Etienne lined up out wide, you see a 20% increase in catches for your slot receiver. It's like, cool. Then you start to think like, all right, well, let's just start using Etienne on the outside. Well, then defense gets used to that. They see it, and then they know, okay, cool, we're going to start covering the slot, because every time it adds to predictability. And the whole point of being an offense and game planning and scheming is to keep the defense off balance. Right. So if you're using analytics to help be like, all right, cool, we can use these tendencies and use that to trip up our opponent, I think that's one thing, versus being like, oh, we're going to use these analytics because they say good things happen when we do this. It's like, that's not always a complete truth.
Okay. JT, you want to hit the analytics?
Sure. I laughed at what I believe was an analytics approach to the Bengals-Ravens game back on Thursday night last week, where instead of kicking the extra point to go into overtime, if the Bengals defense could hold the Ravens for 30 seconds, and live to potentially win the game, they go for 2 and lose. And things like that, I think, are analytics that say, do this because this will happen in this number of cases. Don't do it. Weren't
they on the road though, or was that a home game? Because I can't remember if they were on the road and it was a close, tight game, and analytics says go for 2 to win the game, and then go for 1 if you just want to tie it. Like, I understand that, yes, sometimes kicking the extra point and being like, let's take this into overtime makes sense, but sometimes, like, so for example, if Jacksonville, let's say if Jacksonville was able to drive down the field and get to make that game, let's say it was instead of it being 12-7, let's say it was 13-7 or 14-7 or whatever, and Jacksonville goes down and scores with 5 seconds left on that board, you're at home, you kick the extra point, you go to overtime. But if you're on the road, it might be like, considering how the entire rest of the game was going, it might be better for you to go for 2, just so that you can end the game right then.
Well, see, I understand, especially like in college ball. I'm a little more into that for college games, but in the NFL, and I'm going to bring this up real quick because look at the standings. Because yeah, that is a consideration when you're on the road, and definitely it's been something in preseason games. I think they start going for 2 points way too early in the game to begin with. But here at the end with this, because going to this game, Baltimore was 6-3, Cincinnati would have been 4-5. So you're talking about two games between the teams. So the conservative thing would be to play for the overtime. Try to, at worst you may be getting a tie, but when you're chasing a team like this, so that 2 point failure cost them a game. So now they're 3 games behind Baltimore,
right,
in the division. Right. And yeah, that's, I agree. Like in college where we have a playoff system, or it doesn't really matter or whatever. But in the NFL, it's about making the playoffs, and every game is precious. And it just because I think really because that puts it 7-3. Because that would put look at the Los Angeles Chargers 6-3. They lost another game on the Chargers too, in terms of a wild card positioning. That's my only concern. I agree with I understand that logic though, but
everyone praises analytics when it works and they criticize it when it doesn't, and that's just the nature of the beast.
When like some people say, winning cures everything.
It sure does.
Exactly. Tony is a conflict person, can't make tough decisions. They're more likely to let contracts run out to move on versus firing anyone.
Well, hey, buddy, quick question. Like, not question, but real quick comment, though.
He's pro wrestling management for that other wrestling league. Go ahead.
For AEW. Yeah, no. So here's the thing with Tony Khan specifically. Like, he has a small role in the Jaguars front office, but he is not like a primary decision maker. That's Trent Baalke's decision. And I don't know, man. Like, it's one of those things where I'm like, I would kind of like to see him take more of an expanded role, because I think that he is a lot more football aware than his dad is, as far as like from an ownership standpoint. But then on the other hand, it's one of those things where it's like, if you're not putting your 100% into it, then maybe it's probably not for the best that you're here. Mm-hmm. I don't think. Like, I don't know if it's a conflict situation, but I think it's really just his ability of taking analytics into account for some of the decision making. You have to use it as another data point, and that's how most teams should approach it, and that's how Jacksonville does approach it. They just tend to lean more into it than maybe they should.
Maybe he should use his analytics on player personnel decisions, because then he'd be better than Baalke for sure.
Oh, he does. He was able to bring in a couple of like undrafted free agents over the last 6 or 7 years that have actually been like contributors for this team.
Yeah. I mean, but but look at the draft picks and how bad Baalke's been, and the free agent acquisitions. Oh. Use analytics for that. If he's good at analytics of getting the guys nobody knows about, well, let's make him in charge of the hiring. But one other question I want to get, and like I said, I want you guys to talk about your keys of the game, and we'll do a final score thing. But Corey wants to know, so what are the worst NFL teams? Which team or teams do you hate the most? JT, I'll let you go first.
Oh, ones that I hate the most, or the ones that are just the worst?
The one that you hate the most, because I got him to clarify it in the chat.
Oh, gosh. So. It's got to be Green Bay.
He was just trying to be nice about it. So
it's got to be Green Bay, and then the Cowboys, and then let's see, the Arizona Cardinals for me.
Arizona, that is odd. Yeah.
Well, hear me out. Up until the last couple of years, the Lions had like a 25-year losing record in Arizona. I mean, it was like they had won one game in Arizona and then like hadn't won my entire life every time they went on the road to go play in Arizona. So it was, it was just, you saw, at Arizona, I'm just going to mark that as a loss straight away.
Well, that's like a lot of East Coast teams when they go west. All right. Well, of course, what about the Cowboys get your goat?
Because usually the officials steal the game away. from the Lions. Anytime they go to the playoffs, it's like we have to go through Dallas either to get to the playoffs or the first game in the playoffs. And I can't tell you how many times they've lost because of a poor call or just playing badly.
Yep.
Just playing badly. So, yeah.
All right. Wale, what about you? What teams do you hate the most? And which one do you hate the most? JT, is there one of the three that you hate more than the others?
Oh, Green Bay. 100%.
Green Bay. Okay. You, MC.
I don't know how loudly I could say F the Titans, but it would be the Tennessee Titans.
Well, hey, I know that you get an extra F if you want to say it the right way.
Seven is like all week long, and then again on Sundays. F the Titans, Tennessee Titans. If that entire team like faded into obscurity, like from the blip or something like
Let's
that,
see.
the rest of our lives would be.
Were you even born 25 years ago?
I'm 37, so yes.
Okay. I don't know if you were in town back then, but I went to that damn playoff game. Jaguars 14-2.
Oh yeah.
Unstoppable all friggin' year. All this stuff. Dan Marino's last game the week before.
Retired Marino 62-3, yeah.
Yeah. And the Titans come in. Titans had won both games, one in Jacksonville, one in Tennessee. Comes in, beats the Jaguars in the AFC Championship game. It's like, my God, 3 times in 1 year against the best Jaguar team of all time that we ever had in the third or fourth year of existence.
Yeah.
So fuck Tennessee Titans.
Let's go.
There you go. Because it's like, what the fuck? And it's like, Jeff Fisher, the coach, then was like, "Hey, they're basically Jacksonville's our bitches. That's our home stadium down there too." It got to be such a bad joke. So, were you here to live through those days? Then I was 12 when that happened. So
I
was there in the stadium. It's like bad.
I watched the game on TV after and being highly upset. Now, granted, I don't think I was officially a Jags fan at that point because I had moved from Atlanta, but even then I wasn't a Falcons fan. The Falcons were terrible during that time. So it was one of those things where I was like football agnostic, but would love to follow the hometown team. So I'm very well aware of the pain. But people are like, "Oh, well, I hate Houston. I hate Indy." Like as you should dislike your division rivals, but
this is a particular hatred because of that history. Yeah, and it's just gotten worse since then. Some of the even a couple years ago, there was a decent Jaguars team. The Tennessee kept the Jaguars out of the playoffs.
Last season.
Last season. Yeah, it's like, of course, Derrick Henry, who should have been here in Jacksonville.
They were never drafting Derrick Henry.
I know, but still, one more to get away. But
they were all in on Leonard Fournette. We were never getting Derrick Henry. I will say, thank God Derrick Henry is in Baltimore, so at least we won't see him for a while.
There you go. Okay, any other teams that you don't like, and would Tennessee still be your most hated?
I mean, they're number 1, 2, and 3 on the list. Like I don't really hate a lot of other NFL teams. Like I think the Patriots for a second were there, but I think that hatred changed into just being like, wow, like more of a respect thing because you're like, y'all were so good for 2 decades. There were kids who were born before, like right around the time Brady was taking over, and they never experienced like losing seasons. Like, imagine being in your mid-20s and being like, oh yeah, my team won like 6 or 7 or 8, like 6 Super Bowls, and we only had like 2 losing seasons. And even those losing seasons were like we were a game below 500. Like it's absurd.
And the Lions have never been. They, let alone not winning 6. We haven't even been to 1.
You and me both. But I think this is the year for you guys.
Yeah.
I hope so.
By the way, at the end of the entering the fourth quarter, Miami is now leading the Rams 17-9. So there you go. One team in Florida is winning. All right.
They should be in St. Louis. They'll never win anything.
Yeah, we have friends of the channel that hate the Rams because of the the owner. God, what's his
Stan
name?
Kroenke.
Stan Kroenke, yes.
Yeah.
The same guy that they tried to get in to beef up their bid in 95 or 93 when Jacksonville actually was awarded the team. They tried to bring Kroenke and bolster the St. Louis bid, and then of course he brought the team there.
Well,
and then took them out to California.
I mean, the LA Rams do have a Super Bowl, so it's one of those things where we can't hate too much because they have one.
Well,
speaking of the irony, because Matt Stafford left, and then I was like, oh yeah, now he's going to go win a Super Bowl. The next year, it happened.
Yep. Well, hey, Corey Cochran says it's for the Cowboys. He can't stand them. So you're in good company, Corey, because I know JT obviously agrees with you. As a Cowboys fan, I grew up watching them in the 70s, so they'll always be that special. Because I grew up when the Roger Staubach and all, so that's why my most hated team is the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Fair.
Mm-hmm. Terry Bradshaw, talk about Tebow not being a quarterback in the NFL. Bradshaw sucked, but he won in the Super Bowl. He won in the playoffs. That's what I say. Give me a crappy quarterback that can win the big games. That's the thing with the Steelers. Crushed my dreams many, many times. Second is the San Francisco 49ers for the same damn thing. The catch goes through my mind. Finally, when Jimmy Johnson got there, we exercised those demons. And
put San Francisco been on TV like 40 years now, just to remind you.
Yeah, I know. Well, hey, the third most hated team is now Green Bay, because damn it, Dak Prescott can't beat Green Bay in the playoffs, even when they're the lowest playoff seed.
Green Bay is always super banged up. By the time they get to the playoffs, it's like I don't even know who is on that roster. Even by the second time the Lions play them. In the division matchups, it's like, who is left on this team?
Hey, I got a real quick thing. What about fan bases? See, Corey said that the Cowboys fans are the worst. But have y'all ever run into any particular fan base that really, especially if it's something in real life?
I've never witnessed the Raiders when they were in Oakland. I heard that fan base was something dirty. I've heard Philadelphia's fan base is something dirty. But Green Bay, I tell you, that's half the reason you don't like them, because they travel. They love their team, and they travel, and they wear those stupid blocks of foam cheese on their head. And then, the thing is, they would let you, they would remind you that Brett Favre would throw a 50-yard pass, calling out, pointing to the receiver he's going to throw to in the end zone, last play of the game, and then just do it and win the game and walk off the Ford Field doing that. So,
you want to talk worst fan bases?
Yeah.
So before the Raiders moved to Vegas, Oakland Raiders definitely would be high on that list. Cowboys fans are just annoying. It's like I don't think you mean anything. You're harmless, but you guys just talk a lot for a team that hasn't won anything in like 20 something years. And then
you should see the memes about that. Yeah.
And then Philly fans, I think the closest I've ever been into an actual a fight at a football game were against a Cowboy fan and was against a Philly fan. So all y'all, both of those groups. I think Buffalo fans are a little aggressive, but I also think that they're fun.
Oh,
that's a fun team, though. I like rooting for them.
Yeah, they're a fun team, and but their fans, they're crazy passionate, but it's harmless. It's more like goofing around versus being like belligerent fan about their team.
Yeah. Well, you're right about the Cowboys. I might have to do that one night for a fun thing on one of my late night streams because, the Cowboys in the last 20 years are the poster child for doing nothing. All talk, no bite, and just a constant collapse. Talk about. There's times when that's more frustrating than when you just suck.
Oh yeah, it's better to be just terrible than average.
Yeah. So, or good than choking the playoffs every single year. So, yeah. All right. Well, JT, what are your keys to the game, and what do you see this final ended up with this one?
Sure. So I do not consider this a trap game. I think the Lions will be disciplined at home to do it. The key risk factors for them are the offense in the first half, and will the defense show up in the first half? We know that this team will play the third and fourth quarter, but if they show up any more anemic in the first quarter than they did playing Houston, it could be ugly. It really could be ugly. I would like to see some run game just to take the pressure off of Goff here. And I love Amon-Ra St. Brown as a receiver. I think he is well deserved as their number one wide receiver. And I think if they can exploit a little bit on Laporta, getting that tight end wild card to get some first downs, that'll be great. One of the things that they've struggled with on offense in the first quarter is converting third downs, and they have to execute that better. I think this game is not a scrimmage. You never take an NFL opponent lightly, but I think this is the chance to say, okay, how do we implement a faster start? And if they fail that, they remain in trouble.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
But it's their game to lose. I'll leave it at that. It's their
right.
game to lose.
All right. Wale, what do you think?
Jacksonville has a lot of their work cut out for them. And like I said, if they can try to limit the run, they might and force Goff to throw on some third and longs, they might have an opportunity to steal a possession or two and maybe get some points out of it. But take the Lions and the point spread. If you can get a higher line, take that too, because I think it's going to be like a 42-10
Wow.
absolute drubbing of the Jacksonville Jaguars. I think Sam Laporta is going to score. I think David Montgomery is going to score. Jameson Williams is going to score. I think it's going to get ugly.
I think in the Jaguars' first season, they played at Detroit. I think it was like a 44-0 game. I think that might have been one of Steve Berline's last games of being the starter. So it's like, yeah, it's all lining up to be that kind of game here.
Yeah.
I think really when I looked at the numbers, that's the one thing I like the college way where they leave the passing numbers unaltered by the sacks. I mean, they take out of the running, it kind of deceives the running. But Mac Jones threw only for about 110 yards last week. Got down to a net of about 85 yards, plus also about 60 yards running. You got to do better than 150 yards of net offense in this game. So I think the keys, Jaguars have got to run the ball effectively. Not just in terms of taking time off the clock, but, just to get some points on the board, whether they're field goals and hopefully get some touchdowns inside there to help Mac Jones. Mac Jones was a good quarterback in college, had a little success up in New England, but you gotta be better than this. And Detroit, though, I've seen enough Jaguar breakdowns in the secondary this year, in the times that I've watched. So I think you probably have a 34-13 game, Detroit winning. So
yeah, that sounds about right.
Yep. So all right. Well, folks, guys, y'all got any last comments that y'all want to say or anything that's going on with y'all before we wrap up?
I'm checking in on my kid on our Nanit app because he needs to actually stay asleep. So he's starting to stir a little bit. So I say all of this. Thanks for having me on. It's been fun. Glad I could come in and rant Jaguars, and JT, is nice talking to you. Nice meeting you. I hope you enjoy the win on Sunday. It should be an easy one for you guys. And that's all I've got. Be nice to your friends, be nice to your neighbors, and best of luck with the football team.
Yep, absolutely, JT.
And Deadman, thank you so much for taking this idea or this desire of mine to finally talk about a good Lions team. And it was great because, it's very rare that a team out your way and a team out my way actually play one another.
Well, you challenged me to find a Jaguar fan that would talk, and I had the perfect person that could be here to do it.
Yeah, so. and MC Wale, it was great to meet you. Great talking with you. I appreciate the insight. It was good to get somebody that knows about this team to be able to do some back and forth on it. It was great. So I will take your vote of confidence in my team and enjoy the game this Sunday.
All good, man.
Yeah. Well, folks, this is a new format tonight. I don't know. Maybe if I can find other people of teams interested as this happens, I could kick this around again. Thank you, both of y'all, for coming on tonight. Thanks to everybody that's been out here. Make sure you hit that like button, that you're subscribed if you're not. Just a few things real quick. Going to try to get back to Friday nights at a minimum with late night shows or squirrel streams. Different formats probably. We'll see what happens, but hope to get back into that soon. Catch us Friday, hopefully at 10. Also, tomorrow night at 8 p.m., Daisy Blossom and I have our monthly movie review, Independence Day Resurgence. Yes, we looked at Independence Day last month. This is the sequel. I'm curious to see what people think, because I've heard people say good things and bad things, and come hear what we have to say, good and bad and whatever else. So this should be fun tomorrow night with Daisy. Hope y'all can make it. 8 p.m. on Twitch and YouTube. Of course, that's tonight. And of course, I'm going back to this thing real quick. This is MC Wale right here, folks. This is him in real life, dude. This guy, when he's on the field announcing, he is like this. This is 100% energy. So imagine if he had a good Jaguars team. But,
it would be a problem.
Absolutely. Exactly. Absolutely. So that's him passionately cheering on. Next Sunday at 6, I'm going to be talking with Ariane Briggs. We're going to be talking about Thanksgiving. Here in America, and last month she had some tweets out there about Canadian Thanksgiving. So, hey, to my Canadian friends, come to yourselves, represent yourself strong. So, yeah, it's, never watched it. I've only heard about it. Yeah, look, I was in Palatka, Florida, which is the middle of nowhere, Florida. And it kept running on the cable in the house, in the hotel I was staying at. That's the reason why I started watching it. But hey, all that note, folks, thank y'all for being here. Make sure you hit like, subscribe, follow us over on Twitch. Also, remember tomorrow night, 8 p.m., even if you haven't watched it, come have fun with us, make fun possibly of another movie. But hey, y'all have a good night. Thank you again. And thank you again, JT and MC. And everybody have a good night.
You too. Thanks, man.
Take care.